The courtroom fell silent when a boy no taller than the judge's desk raised his hand and declared, "Your Honor, I am my mother's lawyer." Gasps rippled through the room. Attorneys froze, pens suspended midair. Even the judge, a man with 30 years on the bench, set down his gavel and stared over his glasses. No one could believe it, least of all the boy's powerful father, who nearly dropped his coffee. He thought this case would be a formality, that money and influence would easily win him custody. But what he didn't know was that his 9-year-old son had spent months preparing, quietly gathering evidence that could destroy his empire. What the boy revealed next shocked not only the court, but the entire nation. His name was Daniel Brooks, a skinny 9-year-old with round glasses and a school notebook clutched in his hands. He stood beside his mother, Laura Brooks, a single mom who worked endless shifts as a nurse's aide in Houston, Texas. Across the room sat his father, Gregory Hale, a real estate mogul whose name was plastered on half the billboards in the city. Dressed in a suit worth more than Laura made in 6 months, Gregory sat flanked by 2 of the best lawyers in Texas. Gregory had shown little interest in Daniel's life. In 9 years, he had appeared only a handful of times, always bearing flashy gifts, always leaving quickly. But now, suddenly, he wanted full custody. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. "Son, this is an adult hearing. I can't allow." Daniel interrupted politely but firmly. "Your Honor, according to Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by the United States, I have the right to speak in any case that directly affects me. And this case affects me more than anyone else." The room froze. Gregory's lead attorney shuffled papers nervously. No one had prepared to face a child quoting international law. Gregory's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The child has no capacity to." Daniel closed his notebook with a sharp snap. "If you really cared about my well-being, you'd want to hear what I have to say, instead of trying to silence me." Even the judge leaned forward, curious. "What exactly have you prepared, son?" Daniel opened his scribbled notebook with deliberate care. "I have documented evidence of why I should remain with my mother, and the true motives behind my father's sudden interest in custody." Gregory's face paled. What had his son discovered? For months, Laura thought Daniel was just doing school projects at the library. In reality, he had been working with a kind librarian named Ms. Rodriguez, who taught him how to use public records, archives, and even legal databases. Daniel turned a page. "Your Honor, my father is not here because of love. He is here because of money." He laid out his findings. Gregory had recently lost a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. His 3rd marriage was crumbling. And, most importantly, Daniel's late grandmother had created a trust fund worth nearly $2 million, a fund that Gregory could only access if he gained custody. The courtroom gasped. Gregory's lawyers whispered frantically, but Daniel wasn't finished. From his backpack, he pulled out a small digital recorder. "6 months ago, when my father visited, he had a phone call. He thought I was in my room, but this recorder was on." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Do you want to submit this as evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely." The recording played. Gregory's unmistakable voice filled the courtroom. "As soon as I get custody, the boy's going to boarding school in Colorado. Strict place. He'll be out of the way until he's 18. Meanwhile, I'll have full access to the trust fund. $500 a month covers tuition. The rest is mine. He doesn't even need to know." Laura covered her mouth in shock. The courtroom erupted. Gregory's lawyers turned pale. And then came the second half of the recording, Gregory's voice again. "The kid's too smart for his own good. Always asking questions. Better to keep him out of the picture until I sort things out. We don't need him getting ideas above his station." Gregory jumped to his feet. "This is a trap. He set me up." Daniel stared back coldly. "I didn't set you up. You exposed yourself." Judge Morrison's gavel cracked against the desk. "Order. Mr. Hale, sit down." The judge turned to Daniel. "Do you have anything else to present?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I also researched the boarding school he planned to send me to. In the last 5 years, 3 students died by suicide there. The school is under federal investigation for abuse. That's where he wanted me to go, not for education, but to disappear." The judge's face hardened. He turned toward Gregory. "Mr. Hale, this court is beginning to see a very disturbing pattern." Daniel flipped to the last page of his notebook. "There's one more thing. something my grandmother left behind. He pulled out a letter, shaking slightly but holding firm. Before she died, my grandmother wrote that this trust was created to protect me from my father. She warned that if he ever tried to take custody for money, I should use every resource in the fund to defend myself. She knew what kind of man he was. Gregory slumped in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. He had been completely outmaneuvered by his own son. Judge Morrison slammed his gavel. Custody request denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into possible fraud concerning the trust fund. Gregory's lawyers tried to object, but the damage was done. Security moved closer. The empire Gregory built on lies and intimidation had just been dismantled by a 9-year-old with a notebook and a tape recorder. As Gregory was escorted out, Daniel spoke one final time. I didn't do this to win. I did it because every child deserves a parent who loves them, not one who sees them as a financial opportunity. The recording went viral. Within weeks, Daniel was being called the smartest kid in America. News anchors praised his courage. Lawmakers debated new policies about giving children a stronger voice in custody cases. Laura, once invisible as an overworked nurse's aide, was promoted to supervisor after a scholarship fund was created in her name for children of low-income workers. Daniel began visiting schools, teaching other kids about their rights. His book, Every Child Has a Voice, became a bestseller, funding free legal clinics for struggling families. He even created library programs across the country, making sure every child had access to legal resources written in simple language. And Gregory? His empire collapsed. The fraud investigation destroyed his company. He lost his mansion, his reputation, and eventually served time in prison. Now he lived quietly in a one-bedroom apartment, watching his son on TV, hailed as a hero, and realizing he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. Years later, Daniel stood on a stage at Harvard University, the youngest law student ever admitted to a program on social justice. Reporters asked him what his advice was to children facing hard family battles. He looked straight into the cameras and said, "You are never too small to fight for justice. The truth always finds a way to win, if you're brave enough to speak it." And with that, the boy who once stood trembling in a Houston courtroom proved that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power, and that no amount of money can silence a child who dares to stand for the truth.